Um, we played this game at DTI called High Low Buffalo. So you're going to turn to the person next to you. What it means is highlight from the last week, low light from the last week, Buffalo, the most random thing that happened to you this week. You've got 30 seconds. Turn to the person next to you. High Low Buffalo, off you go. Tim, can you just turn that away from me? Because it's blown my notes away. Thanks. Good job. Good job. Good job. Okay, that's enough. That's enough. Stop being nice to each other. Okay, so for those that don't know, my name is Laura. I am married to Dave, and in the loosest sense of the word, we lead the church here. This is about as organised as you get. So, youth, you're going. See ya. Thanks. Thank you, Sue. Enjoy. Half the church leaves. That's exciting. That was the DTI crowd. We also had some people on team who were also amazing. And we had lots of our own people giving up their weeks to serve, which was hugely appreciated. From what I understand, it's created a bit of a holy jealousy, and quite a few people want to go next year. So they are always looking for team. They are always looking for team. It took... We might be able to show a photo next week. I think there was 600 people on team, and they didn't have enough. So it's a huge, huge undertaking. But you saw there were hundreds and hundreds of young people giving their lives to Jesus, which is just the most exciting thing. And being in a hot, sweaty, slightly fresh-smelling warehouse with 5,000 people, 5,000 teenagers worshipping, is something to behold. So even though I'm really exhausted, it was absolutely worth every moment of it. So yeah, if you're interested, then speak to some of the people that went along, and I'm sure they will all equally advertise it for you. We're going to spend a few minutes this morning thinking about one of the most important things in the world: food. Okay. When I first joined a vineyard church, it was Southend Vineyard. I became a Christian at Southend Vineyard. I was 17 years old. And when I first started going along and started to tell people that I was going to a vineyard church, they were like, "Oh, is that the donut church?" Because Southend Vineyard was... it grew really quickly when it was first planted, but it was known for serving coffee and loads of donuts. And people used to come because there were fresh donuts that were delivered to the service. People couldn't quite believe it. They were like, "You have donuts in your church?" And I was like, "Yeah." And because I'd become a Christian in that church, I thought that was normal. I thought, well, doesn't every church do that? When we planted this church, we wanted to be as generous as we could with no money and no resources. But we wanted to be generous. And so we've always tried to be generous with the little that we have and be generous with our provisions. And so we always serve food whatever you come to, there is always some kind of food. And we also try and have decent coffee, nice big mugs, etc., because it's one of our values. We want people to feel well fed. We want people to be fed physically and spiritually. Now, are we just greedy? Yes. But is there a reason? Why do we place an emphasis on food? And the really short answer is because Jesus did. And if it's good enough for Jesus, then it's certainly good enough for us. And you may notice that for the vast majority of people, and there are exceptions, but for the vast majority of people, if you offer them a donut or a cake or a decent biscuit or brownie, you put people at ease. They're like, oh, thanks. They feel that there is a measure of generosity. That people are like, oh, wow, you're giving me food. Can I give you some money? It's a gift. Food is a great leveler. You can chat over coffee and cake. The number of times that Dave and I have met people who've joined the church, and within a couple of meetings, we're like, do you want to go out for coffee? Do we love coffee? Yes, we do. However, if you're sitting with a cup of coffee and you've got a piece of cake in front of you, it's much easier to have a conversation with someone. You can get to know someone over coffee and cake. You can get to know someone over having a meal. Having food builds community. It brings comfort. And people generally are happier if they are fed. So Dave will tell you quite openly that at certain points in the day, he gets hangry. He's angry because he's hungry. If you feed him, he's much happier. You know, Jesus is a relational God. We follow Jesus because he has connection with people. He's not this aloof, far away deity. He squeezed himself into the constraints of a human who needed to eat, and he wanted to have community and connection and communion with others. He often sat and shared food. He often had meals with people. So, you know, you think about the woman at the well. He starts the conversation, will you give me a drink? He performs his first miracle by serving wine that was previously water at the wedding at Cana. And even in his resurrected form, he prepares food for the disciples. He cooks breakfast for them. So food is at the start and the middle and the end of Jesus's ministry. He uses that common denominator of food and the need to be fed to teach everyone truths about the kingdom. So that's why we place an emphasis on food here at this church. I'm going to tell you a really well-known story this morning, and it's in the Bible. You will be very, very familiar with it. And it's in all 4 Gospels, which is quite unusual. And the version I'm going to look at is in John chapter 6. So, if you have your phone, if you have your iPad, if you have a paper hard copy, however you might want to look at it, you will be extremely familiar with it. I'm going to read this from the Message. This is John chapter 6. After this, Jesus went across the Sea of Galilee. A huge crowd followed him, attracted by the miracles they had seen him do among the sick. When he got to the other side, he climbed a hill and sat down, surrounded by his disciples. It was nearly the time for the feast of Passover, kept annually by the Jews. When Jesus looked out and saw that a large crowd had arrived, he said to Philip, where can we buy bread to feed these people? He said this to stretch Philip's faith. Jesus already knew what he was going to do. Philip, you can imagine Philip saying there, like counting the people, counting his money. 200 silver pieces won't be enough to buy bread for each person to get even a piece of bread. One of the disciples, it was Andrew, brother of Simon Peter, said, there is a small boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But that's just a drop in a bucket for a crowd like this. This is the Message version. Jesus said, make the people sit down. There was a nice carpet of green grass in this place. They sat down, about 5,000 of them. Then Jesus took the bread and have given thanks, gave it to those who were seated. He then did the same with the fish. All ate as much as they wanted. When the people had their fill, he said to the disciples, gather the leftovers so that nothing is wasted. They went to work and they filled 12 large baskets with leftovers from the 5 barley loaves. The people realized that God was at work among them in what Jesus had just done. They said, this is the prophet for sure. God's prophet is right here in Galilee. Jesus saw that in their enthusiasm, they wanted to grab him and make him king then and there. So he slipped away and went back to the mountain to be by himself, etc., etc., etc. It goes on and on and on. And then he does another miracle. And then later on, in the same chapter, he talks about being the bread of life. So there are lots and lots of little things in this chapter. This chapter happens immediately after John the Baptist, Jesus' cousin, has been beheaded. And all 4 Gospels talk about the fact that Jesus, when he sees this big crowd gathering, he has compassion on them. Bearing in mind what he's just seen happen to his cousin, if that was me, I wouldn't be having a load of compassion in that moment. I'd be distraught, I'd be seething, I'd be angry. But in that moment, Jesus decides to feed thousands of people. And he uses a little boy who basically had his packed lunch to help him. This story is so significant that it's set down in all 4 Gospels. It's set down in history, and it changed that community. That event is recorded for all time. So, a couple of things I want to point out. Now, it says about 5,000 men were fed that day. They only counted the men. So, there were probably women. There were probably children. There was probably more than one child per family. There was at least 15,000 people there. But they only counted the men because they were the only ones worth counting at the time. So at least 15,000 people were fed at that day. Few things to point out from that story. Jesus wanted to use food to teach not only the people, but to teach the disciples. So the first thing he does is he asks Philip the question, where are we going to get the bread from? He was doing it to test Philip, because Philip tries to do it and tries to answer it in a human way. He looks for a human solution. He gets out the silver coins. Can't buy many loaves of bread with that. That's not really going to cut it, Jesus. By asking Philip for a human solution to feed this massive crowd, Jesus highlighted that miracles needed to be at play. And the disciples and the crowd needed to rely on Jesus. Philip, clever guy, tried to assess and work out the cost and realised it wasn't going to work. How many times do we have an issue in our life and the first default position is to try and work it out with our own resources and our own strength and our own intelligence? And there's lots and lots of times that Dave and I have tried to do something, and then we're almost like Homer Simpson. We're like, why don't we pray? Why don't we ask God to do it? We've tried all of our best methods, and they didn't work. Why don't we pray? And sometimes you can almost imagine Jesus being like, oh, finally. Financial resources are not always the most important things. Philip did not have enough money to make that thing work. God can multiply many resources in many different ways. And I know that Dave has stood at the front a number of times and said, on paper, when we've tried to do financial things, there's just not enough money in our account, either our personal or the church account, to make things work. And yet, and it's the and yet that this story is about. Sometimes there is a danger of us, in our humanness, of limiting God. You see, if we offer nothing to God, he's got nothing to use. He's got nothing to multiply. He's got nothing to bless. But if we offer the little that we have, it can turn into something huge, something great, something remarkable. I think Dave mentioned a couple of weeks ago that DTI started with 40 teenagers 20 years ago. And it was in a barn in Wales. And it rained. And it was awful. And yet we've just had more than 5,000 people on site. And the most amazing thing, and I was saying this to Colin and Raquel earlier, is that the Elim Church also hires the same site. So DTI, Vineyard Churches, hire the Staffordshire Showground for 2 weeks alongside the Elim Church. And the first week, DTI happens. And then they pack down and leave. And I kid you not, they leave at 11 o'clock. And at midday, the Elim Church come and they set up the Limitless Youth Festival, which is I think it's even bigger than DTI. But they share the cost of things like the massive marquees to make what they have go further. And so the things that we are talking about, 5,000 teenagers and hundreds of people giving their lives to Jesus, that's just the record for DTI. Limitless is going on now. And I think they finish tomorrow. And they also will have equally amazing stories. It starts with something small and having the risk and the faith that God will do something incredible. One of the really interesting things about this story, the feeding of the 5,000, happens with the boy. He gets one mention. We don't know who this boy was. We never know his name. He is famous forever because he turned up with a lunch. But the miracle happened because of his willingness to give it and to share it. And then the miracle happens in the hands of the disciples. It's the disciples that are handing out the fish and the bread. Nearly at the end, oh no, there's more. Oh, no, there's more. Oh, there's more. There's more. There's more. I would have so loved to have been a disciple in that event, being, this never-ending basket of food. How amazing was that? That they just kept giving and kept giving and kept giving and kept giving and kept giving. And then people, like, do you want some more? Oh, no, I'm full. I've had thirds. Oh. Hands for the more. Have some more. We got loads left over. What a remarkable story. The boy was a young boy. The disciples were much older. The boy kind of led the way. He was the one that was willing and able. Jesus will use anyone who is ready and willing and available, regardless of how little they have. God took the meager, he took the small lunch, essentially a few leftovers, turned it into something miraculous and abundant, community changing, forever recorded in history. Verse 12, after everyone was full, the leftovers were gathered, so nothing was wasted. 12 baskets were filled with the scraps and the leftovers. That is absolutely astonishing. Jesus can take whatever we have, our time, our money, our talent, our resources, and he can multiply it way beyond our expectations. But our side of the deal is that we bring what we have, and rather than hold on to it, we offer it to God. We give it to God. If we make ourselves available to God, he will bless what we have abundantly. We've talked in this church that we don't want to just be greedy and end up as fat Christians. We want to be greedy so we can give it away and give it away and give it away. And I know that in the last couple of weeks, Dave's talked about starting, we're going to start like a food bank, a food pantry here. How amazing that we can use our building to bless those who need food. Jesus will feed us physically. He will feed us emotionally and spiritually if we are ready, if we are willing, if we are available. And the amazing thing is, because the little boy offered the small thing and gave it away freely, he was blessed, the disciples were blessed, and 15,000 people were fed and blessed. The truth of the kingdom, the multiplication of the kingdom of God happened right there in that moment. And then those people who were fed were then able to listen and hear. And they saw Jesus, said, surely he's among us. The prophet's among us. Let's make him king. Let's make him king. And Jesus like, not yet, not yet. There's some other stuff I need to teach you. But they were ready to hear what God had for them. So what's God saying to you this morning? Are you ready to hear what God has for you? Are there things, however big, however small, in your life that you can bring to the table and say, this is what I've got, God. It's not very much. I think it's a bit stale. It's not very nice. But God, will you use it? Are you going to bring what you have to the table and then see what God will do to bless it? Why don't you stand? We're going to pray.